It started like any other summer evening, the air thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and barbecue smoke. The cicadas chirped their incessant song as the sun sank behind the horizon, casting a golden glow over the rows of chairs I had meticulously set up in our backyard. I surveyed the setup, pleased with how everything looked. Lanterns hung from the oak trees, casting soft light on the scene below, and the patio table groaned under the weight of my carefully prepared appetizers. It was perfect, too perfect for the occasion. Emily, my wife, was inside, busying herself with some last-minute details. Her humming was soft, almost cheerful, as though she had no idea her entire world was about to crumble. I had known about the affair for weeks. Her feigned late nights at the office, the sly text notifications she thought I didn't notice, and her strange new habits, wearing perfume to run errands and glowing after yoga class. I played dumb, observing her like a hawk, until I had enough proof. When I saw her lover, Mark, kiss her outside that cheap motel, something inside me clicked. But this wasn't a story about screaming matches or pathetic pleading. No, I had other plans. Plans that would ensure this betrayal would scar her in ways she couldn't imagine. The first guest to arrive was Lisa, Mark's wife. Lisa had always been friendly in that polite, distant way neighbors are. She was beautiful, with sleek brown hair and hazel eyes that seemed perpetually sad, as though she carried the weight of secrets she couldn't share. I greeted her warmly, offering her a glass of sangria. "Where's Mark?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Oh, you know Mark," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Always working late." Her smile was tight, her fingers gripping the glass a little too hard. I wondered if she suspected, if she, like me, had followed her spouse to that grimy motel and watched them entwine through a cracked window. By the time Emily emerged from the house, the backyard was bustling with neighbors and friends. She wore a sundress I'd bought her for our anniversary, her hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She looked radiant, and for a moment, I almost hated her for it. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and then they landed on Lisa. The color drained from her face. "Lisa," she stammered, clutching the edge of the table for support. "I didn't know you were coming." "Oh, David insisted," Lisa said, smiling warmly. "It's so nice of you two to host this. Mark mentioned you've been wanting to do something like this for ages." Emily's eyes darted to me, pleading silently. She didn't know what I had planned, but she could sense the trap tightening. I raised my glass to her from across the yard, a smile playing on my lips. Dinner was a slow, torturous affair. I made sure Emily and Lisa sat next to each other. The conversation was stilted at first, but the wine flowed freely, and soon everyone was laughing and joking. I told stories, deliberately weaving little barbs into my anecdotes that only Emily would understand. "Remember that weekend trip we planned to the mountains?" I said, looking at Emily. "Funny how things change. Plans go sideways, don't they?" Emily's hand trembled as she reached for her drink. Lisa, oblivious to the tension, leaned in. "What happened? Did something come up?" "Oh, you know," I said with a shrug. "Some things just fall apart." It wasn't until dessert that I dropped the bombshell. I waited until everyone was relaxed, the glow of wine and laughter making the air thick with ease. I stood, tapping my glass for attention. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady. "It's so wonderful to share this evening with friends and neighbors. I wanted to take a moment to celebrate something special. Truth." Emily froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Truth has a funny way of surfacing, doesn't it?" I continued, pacing slowly around the table. "We try to bury it, hide it behind lies and secrets, but eventually it claws its way to the surface." The crowd was silent now, their smiles fading as they exchanged confused glances. "Lisa," I said, turning to her, "I've been meaning to tell you something. Something I think you deserve to know." Lisa blinked, her confusion turning to apprehension. "It's about Mark," Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "David, stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. I ignored her. "I know this might be hard to hear," I said, placing a comforting hand on Lisa's shoulder. "But Mark and Emily have been spending time together. More time than two married people should." The silence was deafening. Lisa's face crumpled, her eyes darting between me and Emily. Emily, for her part, looked like she might faint. "You're lying," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I were," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "But I have proof. Photos, messages, Dates, times, locations. I set the phone on the table, the screen glowing with the damning evidence. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Lisa stormed out, tears streaming down her face while Emily sat frozen, her cheeks wet with silent tears. The guests made their excuses, leaving quickly and awkwardly, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and discomfort. Once the yard was empty, I turned to Emily. "This is what betrayal feels like," I said, my voice cold. "It's public, humiliating, and unforgettable." She didn't respond, her body shaking with sobs. I left her there, sitting alone under the lanterns, the perfect party, now nothing more than a battlefield of shattered trust. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. The house was silent when I stepped back inside. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound as I poured myself a drink. I had no interest in consoling Emily. Her tears were wasted on me. I wanted more than an emotional reckoning. I wanted to strip everything from her and Mark until their lives were as hollow as their promises. The doorbell rang. My first thought was Lisa coming back, but when I opened the door, it was Mark. He stood on the porch, his sleeves rolled up, his jaw clenched in a way that tried too hard to convey authority. I could see the slight tremble in his hand. "David," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Come in. I wouldn't want the neighbors to see you squirm." Mark walked in, his eyes scanning the room like a cornered animal. "You had no right to do that. Dragging Lisa into this. Exposing everything. No right?" I barked a laugh, slamming the door shut behind him. "You think you get to play the moral high ground after you screwed my wife?" His jaw tightened, and he took a step closer, his finger pointing in my face. "You don't understand. This isn't about you. Emily and I—" "Don't finish that sentence," I growled, stepping forward until we were chest to chest. "You think I don't understand? You think your little soap opera romance justifies the destruction you caused?" Mark's hand shot out, shoving me back. "It's not that simple." I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him stumbling back into the hall table. The vase on top shattered as he crashed into it, but I wasn't done. Before he could recover, I grabbed him by the collar and drove him into the wall. The drywall cracked under the force. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this," I snarled, my knuckles slamming into his ribs. "Weeks. Weeks of watching you lie, smile in my face, and steal what was mine." Mark grunted, swinging wildly. His fist clipped my shoulder, but the pain only fueled my rage. He tried to wrestle me off, his face a mask of desperation, but I was bigger, angrier, and far more determined. I drove him down to the floor, pinning him. "You're pathetic," I hissed, my hand tightening around his throat. "You think you're some kind of romantic hero? You're just another liar." Mark's eyes bulged as he clawed at my hand, choking out, "Stop! Enough!" I released him, watching as he gasped for air. I stood over him, fists clenched, my chest heaving. "Get up," I demanded. "We're not done." He scrambled to his feet, his lips split and blood dripping from his nose. He charged, tackling me into the living room. We crashed into the coffee table, the glass top shattering beneath us. Pain shot through my back, but I didn't care. I elbowed him in the side of the head, rolling us over until I was on top again. "I should ruin you," I said, gripping his shirt. "Your job, your reputation, everything. You deserve it." Mark didn't respond, his head lolling to the side. I stood, leaving him in a heap on the floor. Emily was standing at the top of the stairs, her face pale and her eyes wide with horror. "What the hell are you doing?" she screamed, running down. She knelt beside Mark, cradling his head like a wounded soldier. "Have you lost your mind?" I stared at her, my chest still heaving. "Funny you ask that now, Emily. When you were sneaking around behind my back, did it ever occur to you I might find out? Or were you just hoping I'd stay blind forever?" Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, I didn't feel a shred of pity. "You didn't have to do this," she cried. "You're turning into a monster." "A monster?" I stepped closer, looming over her. "No, Emily. I'm what happens when you break someone's trust and think you'll get away with it." I pointed to Mark, still groaning on the floor. "That's your prize. That's who you risked everything for. Take a good look at him, at your mess." She didn't say anything, just stared at me, her lip trembling. I walked past her, grabbing my keys off the counter. "Where are you going?" she called after me. To let this sink in, I said, not looking back, I suggest you figure out what you're going to do next, because this, I gestured to the house, the broken glass, and the blood on my knuckles. This is just the beginning. I slammed the door behind me, the sound echoing in the quiet night. I spent the night in a motel on the edge of town, nursing a scotch and replaying the fight in my head. Every punch, every shout was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. Mark and Emily had taken more than my dignity. They had taken years of my life, trust, and effort, and crushed them like ash. A few broken ribs and a ruined dinner party wouldn't balance the scales. I needed something bigger. The idea came to me as I sat on the sagging motel bed, staring at the cracked TV screen. If they wanted to destroy my life, I'd return the favor tenfold. The next morning, I was at my lawyer's office, before they even unlocked the doors. I want to start divorce proceedings, I told him, my voice flat. And I want to ruin her. The lawyer, a shark-like man named Callahan, leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Adultery cases don't always hold up like they used to, but if you've got evidence— Oh, I have plenty, I said, sliding a folder across his desk. Inside were photos, texts, and financial records I had carefully compiled. But I'm not stopping there. I want her blindsided. Frozen accounts, asset grabs. Whatever we can do, we do it. Callahan's grin was predatory. Now you're speaking my language. Within a week, Emily's world began to unravel. It started with the bank freezing our joint accounts. Emily called me in a panic, her voice frantic on the other end of the line. David, what's going on? The bank says there's a hold on everything. I wouldn't worry, I said calmly. Just call Mark. Maybe he can cover you. She started to cry, but I hung up before she could finish. Next came the house. I filed for exclusive use of the property, citing her infidelity and the instability it created. She didn't even see it coming. A court order arrived the next day, giving her 72 hours to vacate. When she tried to fight it, my lawyer unleashed a barrage of evidence so overwhelming that her attorney practically begged for a settlement. Mark wasn't spared either. I sent copies of the texts and photos to his employer, an ultra-conservative financial firm with strict morality clauses. By the end of the week, he was out of a job. Lisa, furious and empowered after the revelation at the party, filed for divorce herself, hitting him with demands that would drain what little money he had left. But the pièce de résistance was my final move. Mark's prized possession was a cabin by the lake, a secluded retreat where he and Emily had carried out most of their affair. I discovered through a little creative snooping that he hadn't officially put Emily's name on the deed yet, despite his promises to her. That gave me an opening. I called a contractor, an old friend who owed me a favor. What do you need? He asked. I need that cabin leveled, I said, my voice like steel. Not just the walls, everything. Foundation, plumbing, wiring. It all goes. Demolition? He asked, surprised. You trying to rebuild? Nope, I said. Just taking out the trash. The demolition crew arrived on a cloudy Wednesday morning, their machines roaring to life as they tore into the cabin. I stood nearby, sipping coffee, watching the structure collapse under the force of bulldozers and claw cranes. By the end of the day, nothing was left but rubble and dust. Mark showed up an hour later, his car screeching to a halt in the dirt driveway. He stumbled out, his face a mask of disbelief, as he stared at the destruction. What the hell? He shouted, storming toward me. What did you do? I smiled, savoring the rage in his eyes. I thought it was time to clear out some dead weight. The place was rotting anyway, kind of like your morals. You son of a— He lunged at me, but I stepped back, letting him trip over the uneven ground. Careful, Mark, I said, laughing. You're unemployed now. Don't want to add hospital bills to your tab. He sat there, panting, his fists clenched in the dirt. You'll pay for this, David. You can't destroy me like this. I crouched down, meeting his gaze. Destroy you? Mark, you did that all on your own. I'm just finishing the job. By the end of the month, Emily was living in a shabby apartment on the wrong side of town, working a retail job to make ends meet. Mark had all but disappeared, his social media accounts deleted, his reputation in shreds. Lisa and I kept in touch occasionally, exchanging updates like war generals, discussing the fallout of a successful campaign. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. Revenge didn't heal the scars, but it made them bearable. And as I stood in my empty backyard, The lanterns swaying gently in the breeze, I couldn't help but smile. The world was quiet again, and I intended to keep it that way. It was a warm Friday evening when I sat down to finalize my plans. Emily's family had always been her fortress, a tightly knit circle of enablers who excused every misstep she made. They were the type to throw stones from glass houses, smug in their righteousness. When Emily's affair came to light, they rallied around her, casting me as the villain who had provoked her betrayal. I hadn't retaliated against them, yet, but now, with Emily and Mark left in ruins, it was time to expand the battlefield. Her father, Gerald, was my first target. A pillar of the community, Gerald prided himself on his reputation as a charitable businessman. He ran a successful construction company, one that Emily often bragged about at family gatherings. What she didn't know, and what I had discovered during one of those dull Christmas dinners, was that Gerald's company wasn't as squeaky clean as it appeared. Over the years, I'd heard snippets of conversation about corner cutting, unlicensed subcontractors, and dubious safety inspections. At the time, I'd shrugged it off. Family secrets weren't my business, but now they were a weapon. I sent an anonymous tip to the State Licensing Board and OSHA, complete with detailed notes about Gerald's shoddy practices. It didn't take long for investigators to show up at his office. Within weeks, fines were levied, permits revoked, and several of his construction projects shut down. The local news picked up the story, plastering Gerald's face on the evening broadcast. "Respected businessman under investigation for violations," the headline read. Emily called me that night, her voice trembling with rage. "Was this you?" she demanded. "Was what me?" I asked, my tone deliberately casual. "Don't play dumb, David. My dad's company is under investigation. He says someone leaked internal information." I let the silence linger, savoring her frustration. "Maybe your father should have been more careful," I said finally. "Reputation's a fragile thing, isn't it?" "You bastard," she spat before hanging up. Next, I turned my attention to her brother, Aaron. Aaron had always been a pompous blowhard, quick to lecture me about how I didn't deserve someone like Emily. What he didn't know was that I'd kept tabs on his extracurricular activities. He had a gambling problem, one he tried to hide from his wife and kids. But secrets don't stay buried for long, especially when someone is motivated to dig them up. I reached out to one of the bookies Aaron frequented, posing as someone interested in settling Aaron's debts. I offered a generous payment in exchange for records of Aaron's betting habits, numbers, dates, even audio recordings of Aaron begging for extensions. The bookie, seeing dollar signs, eagerly complied. I mailed the evidence anonymously to Aaron's wife, along with a note, "Your husband's been gambling away your future. Thought you should know. A friend." The fallout was swift. Aaron's wife kicked him out, filed for divorce, and demanded sole custody of the kids. The humiliation was compounded when Aaron's employer, a prestigious law firm, discovered his gambling debts and fired him for ethical concerns. Emily's mother, Diane, was my final target. She was the queen bee of their family, a sharp-tongued matriarch who never missed an opportunity to remind me I wasn't good enough for her daughter. Diane lived for her social circle, hosting luncheons and charity events to maintain her image as the perfect hostess. What most people didn't know was that Diane had been siphoning money from one of her charitable organizations for years. Emily had let it slip once during an argument, laughing about how all the big names do it. I gathered every piece of financial evidence I could find, combing through public records and anonymously contacting disgruntled former employees. Then, I sent a detailed dossier to a journalist at the local paper. The expose hit the front page within days. Beloved philanthropist accused of embezzling charity funds. Diane's carefully curated image shattered overnight. Donations dried up, her social circle ostracized her, and the IRS launched an audit that stripped her of nearly everything. By the time I was done, Emily's once proud family was in shambles. Gerald was bankrupt, Aaron was unemployed and divorced, and Diane was a pariah. Emily herself, still living paycheck to paycheck in her dingy apartment, tried to rally them together, but their unity had fractured under the weight of their own egos. One evening, months later, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was Emily. "Why?" she asked, her voice hollow. "You really have to ask?" I replied. You didn't just hurt me, David. You destroyed my family. No, Emily, I said, my voice calm but firm. I exposed your family. There's a difference. She was silent for a moment, and I could hear the faint sound of her sobbing. I hope you're happy, she whispered. I am, I said, hanging up. For the first time in years, I truly was. Months turned into a year. The dust had settled, and the destruction I wrought had crystallized into a permanent reality for Emily and her family. I wasn't the man I'd been before all of this began. Perhaps I wasn't better. I'd learned that revenge, while sweet in the moment, leaves scars even on the one wielding it. But I was free of them, and that alone was worth everything. One evening, as I sat on the back porch of my new home, a place I'd bought far from the memories of my old life, I received a letter, a real one, handwritten, the kind that feels more intimate than any phone call or email. The return address was Emily's. I considered throwing it away unopened, but decided against it. Curiosity got the better of me, so I poured a glass of whiskey and unfolded the paper. Her handwriting was familiar, though shakier than I remembered, as if her hand trembled while writing. David, I'm not writing to beg for forgiveness. I know better than to expect that from you. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm writing at all, except that there's no one left for me to talk to. Mark is gone. After everything fell apart, he left town. No goodbye, no explanation. Just disappeared. I suppose I should have expected it. Men like him only stick around when things are easy. My family? You saw to it that they'll never forgive me. Not that I blame them. My father, my brother, my mother, they blame me for bringing you into their lives. For letting you destroy them, I blame myself too. I see now what I had, what I threw away. I've replayed every moment in my head, every decision that led me here, and I still can't figure out why I did it. Maybe I thought I deserved more, something better than the life we had. But now I see that what I had with you was more than I ever deserved. I'm sorry, David. Not just for the affair, but for everything. For the hurt I caused you. For the way I betrayed your trust. For the years I stole from you. I hope you found peace. I hope you found someone who deserves you. I don't know if I'll ever find peace myself, but writing this, knowing you'll read it, feels like the first step. Take care of yourself. You deserve to be happy. Emily. I read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. I set it on the table beside me, letting the words linger in my mind. A part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, to revel in her misery, to know that she finally understood the depths of her betrayal. But another part of me, a part I hadn't felt in a long time, felt something closer to pity. She had destroyed herself long before I ever stepped in. All I did was hasten the process. I sat there for a while, staring at the stars, the letter untouched beside me. Then, without a second thought, I picked it up and fed it into the flames of the fire pit. The paper curled and blackened, the words disappearing into ash. Her apology was too late, but that didn't matter anymore. I had my life back. And this time, I intended to live it fully, unshackled by the weight of her lies.